Good afternoon and welcome back to the externally led, patient-focused drug development meeting on schizophrenia. My name is Tim Franson. I'm here with my co-moderator, Polly Benjamin. We had a great series of presentations and discussions this morning to help us understand what it is like to live with schizophrenia and how it impacts daily life. We're moving now into our second topic for today, where we're going to be talking about both current and future approaches to treatment. As you'll see on the screen now, here's some of the topics that we hope to go over. So let's look at our session 2 topical array. This is about people living with schizophrenia and caregivers and their perceptions as we explore the broader topics of treatments. Let's take a look at each of these. So for current and future schizophrenic treatments, first of 7, what are you or your loved one currently doing to treat your schizophrenia?
And number 2, how well does your current treatment regimen treat the most significant symptoms of your disease?
Third, what are the most significant downsides to your current treatments, and how do they affect your daily life?
Number 4, have you ever stopped taking a medication to treat schizophrenia, and if so, why?
Fifth, what factors do you take into account when considering a new treatment for your schizophrenia?
Number 6, outside of cost and/or insurance coverage, have you experienced challenges accessing prescription medicines for schizophrenia?
And seventh and finally, short of a cure, what specific things would you look for in an ideal schizophrenia treatment? So with that in mind, Polly?
Yes, thank you, Tim. When we talk about treatments, we really mean that in the broadest sense. So this means medicines and medical devices, but we're also talking about a broader range of things such as therapy or support groups and even lifestyle modifications. We're interested in hearing about what you or your loved one currently do or have previously done to make living with schizophrenia a little bit easier. We want to hear about how well those treatments address the most significant symptoms of schizophrenia, such as the ones we heard about this morning. In addition to hearing how well or maybe not so well some of these treatments work, we also want to explore some of the most significant downsides of those different treatment approaches and how those downsides affect daily life. This can include anything from side effects of drug treatments or the burden of needing to undertake a certain treatment approach or regimen. Anything that you would view as a downside, we want to hear about that from you.
Once we've explored this range of different current therapies that you have available, we're going to take a look towards the future. While we would all like to see a complete cure for schizophrenia, short of that, we want to know what specific things you would look for in a future treatment. So, to help us kick off this discussion on current and future approaches to treatment, it's my pleasure to introduce members of our second panel of the day, Alicia, Rachel, Carson, Steve, Michael, and Lisa, who will be sharing their experiences as well as perspectives. Alicia, take it away.
I had my first schizophrenic episode when I was 20 years old, but wasn't diagnosed until 2011 while in a psychiatric ward. I was first hospitalized when I was 21 for depression and paranoia, partly because of that first episode. I was diagnosed paranoid in my 20s and have been on 2 typical antipsychotics and 5 atypical antipsychotics in my life. The only side effects I've ever had with an antipsychotic is weight gain, and one atypical antipsychotic, and tardive dyskinesia with 1 typical antipsychotic. Since I was diagnosed schizophrenic, I've been on 3 atypical antipsychotic meds. The first one didn't help at all. The second and third help me be less paranoid, but don't help me at all with my delusion. No antipsychotic meds have helped me with my psychotic delusions. Once I believed them 100%, unless I had direct proof they were incorrect. I had a delusion from April 2019 to November 2019, when I finally had direct proof the delusion wasn't real. I had a horrific 12-year delusion that lasted from 2009 to 2021, whereby I believe Michelle Obama was out to get me and out to destroy my life. In 2011, I experienced electric shocks to my chest that I believed came from the CIA or FBI. The three atypical drugs didn't help at all. Last year, I finally stopped having this delusion when I contacted two very well-connected acquaintances who said they hadn't heard anything about me. If I was the most important person in the world, known by heads of state, I figured they would have heard something. One of the worst days was election day in November of 2020 when I thought CNN commentators were responding directly to my thoughts, or thought broadcasting as it's called. I've had what I believe is an even worse delusion the last 15 months, whereby I believe I have to be on Twitter every day to save democracy, this country, and the world. I believe a woman on Twitter is out to destroy my life if I'm not on Twitter every day. Again, I think I'm the most important person, not just on the internet, but in the world. I believe the Bidens, Clintons, Obamas, etc. know me well. I believe I'm the top influencer in the world, and things happen in the news and in the world as a direct result of what I post on Twitter, my thoughts and my actions. I believe people, including President Biden and the chief of staff, could read my thoughts. Like with the 12-year delusion, I believe good and bad things happen in the world and in this country because of my thoughts, action, and what I post on Twitter. At the moment, I'm not sure if either of these two delusions are real or not. Of course, I believe my current delusion is real, mainly because I knew this woman from the blogosphere around 2005, 2010, and she could hate me and really wanted to get back to me for leaving their group in 2007. This delusion and the people who I think know me from this delusion are making me believe the 12-year delusion may have partly been true. That is, the Obamas really do know me. I ended up in a mental hospital in December 2010, thinking they wanted me dead or in jail, so I shoplifted so I could go to jail instead of dying and end up in a mental hospital. My family stopped the police in time, telling them I was schizophrenic, so I ended up in a mental hospital instead. Life is now a nightmare. This delusion takes all my time. I think I have to be on Twitter every day, review all the cable news YouTubes after watching them, posting them, follow news sites, newsletters, and of course Twitter, and post on Twitter to save this country. I phone bank for the Democratic Party and will do so until the election. I think the party depends on me to succeed in the midterm elections, and I'm extremely stressed out, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. I've never been on an antipsychotic medication that worked. I dream of being on one that works, so I don't have live these nightmares. So I don't believe these delusions. I go to therapy every other week, my psychiatrist once a month. I attend a local NAMI support meeting. I attend Celebrate Recovery on Fridays, where I sometimes talk about my delusion in small group. I plan to go back to Schizophrenia and Psychosis Action Alliance meetings because I haven't recently, because I'm so sure this delusion is real. All my therapists and psychiatrists were 100% sure my delusions weren't real. My brother is 100% sure it's in my head, and my ex-boyfriend, whose father was bipolar and psychotic, is 100% sure it's in my head. I've called the area mental health hotline 211 11 times in the past 15 months about this delusion, and they mostly thought it's in my head and gave me wonderful suggestions on what to do and how to better take care of myself. I usually don't take my 2 antipsychotic drugs because I think this delusion is real, and I just need to save my energy fighting people who are out to get me. Also, they don't really help. I do CBT, weighing the evidence for and against my delusion. I've contacted 43 people in the past 15 months who said they haven't heard anything about me and this delusion. There are 20 people I've contacted who haven't got back to me, so I figure they're in on the conspiracy and they're out to get me. I'm going to keep confronting people to reassure myself that this delusion isn't real. Every time someone gets back to me and tells me they haven't heard anything about me, I'm greatly relieved. This week, I will talk to my neighbor across the street, who I'm 100% sure knows about me and my activity on Twitter. It will be a great relief if he says he hasn't heard anything. 2 weeks ago, I talked to the lead pastor of my former church, who I believed was obsessed with me, and it was a great relief to me to find out he didn't know me from Adam. Schizophrenia is a force of nature.
Hi, my name is Rachel. I'm a mom. My son is Carson. When Carson was 18 years old, he developed schizoaffective disorder. He was assigned to a community mental health clinic where he received several different antipsychotic medications. None of the medications that they used were very effective. His positive symptoms responded and he was doing better, but Carson still couldn't work. He still couldn't go to school, and he just didn't seem like the same person that he was before he got sick. I remember the doctor taking me into a back room and telling me that this was the best Carson would get and that I just needed to accept it. I went to another doctor who said, if you get the meds dialed in really well, he'll come back about 70%, and that was what I should really be going for. Fortunately, both of those doctors were wrong. Carson started a medication called clozapine and has since made a full recovery, and he lives today with no symptoms, and he's doing great. When I first asked his doctor at the community mental health clinic about clozapine, she said, "Oh, no, that's a very dangerous drug, and we only do that as a last resort." I think I heard the words last resort from about 20 different medical professionals. And indeed, at that community mental health clinic, they had 900 patients, all with SMI, and only 20 of them were taking clozapine. It was really reserved for the most treatment resistant and the very sickest patients. And Carson, in their estimation, didn't qualify for something like that. They also avoided clozapine because of the challenges and the barriers that are involved. The weekly blood work, the added paperwork created a lot of problems in terms of transportation, arranging taxi cabs, and having staff available to manage all that paperwork, and the REMS surveillance platforms required data entry. The goal at this community health clinic, like many others, was to have all the patients on a monthly antipsychotic injection because that is a lot more convenient, even if it is an inferior medication. I went to a second doctor and asked about clozapine. And the first thing they said was, "That's a really old medication, and we have plenty of newer drugs to choose from now." I went to a third doctor who simply said, "We don't do clozapine here." I went to a fourth doctor. They said, "We do clozapine, but since your son really doesn't like medications and doesn't want to take them, he probably won't be very compliant, and so we can't do clozapine for your son." I found a fifth doctor who was willing to put my son on clozapine, and she is 2 hours away. That doctor also has extra staff just to supervise the paperwork, the labs, the results, and enter that data into the REMS surveillance platform. Carson finally, a year after his diagnosis, started clozapine with a very slow titration and along with several other adjunctive medications to treat side effects. Approximately 3 months later, Carson kind of woke up and was able to read, able to study, and eventually able to go back to college. He's currently enrolled in school, getting 2 college degrees, and working a job at the university. If I hadn't pressed for clozapine and really fought for it, Carson would still be very sick today. He would probably be gravely disabled. It is unfortunate that Carson had to suffer for over a year taking a myriad of medications that just weren't working very well for him. And it is unfortunate that the doctors at the community health clinic thought he was doing well when really he had the opportunity to do much better. Carson has made a full recovery, and he's got his life back because of early intervention with clozapine. Carson has never had a granulocytosis or even a low white blood cell count. The whole reason for the weekly blood work, he's never had a problem with it. And in fact, that condition is very rare with clozapine, and it's even more rare in young patients like Carson. The REMS surveillance platform that requires mandatory reporting of weekly or monthly ANC data has been very problematic, especially in November of 2021 when the system malfunctioned and pharmacies stopped dispensing clozapine. Carson's doctor was unable to authorize the prescription, and our prescription was stopped. I had to go to great lengths to make sure that Carson did not have an interruption in his treatment. I waited on hold for hours, and so did Carson's doctor. It was a scary time. For Carson, clozapine is a vital daily medication, and even one missed dose will have consequences and will set him back in his treatment. One of our biggest worries is that Carson will not be able to receive clozapine. We worry about pharmacy problems, prescription problems, general lack of availability, and we're also very concerned that someday his wonderful doctor will retire and that we won't find a doctor that will prescribe this important medication. Carson is lucky that we fought for clozapine and that he was able to have a relatively early intervention with this life-saving treatment. I'm going to let Carson share with you a few of his own words about his experience with clozapine.
I was at a community outpatient clinic. I was taking a lot of different medications. A lot of them had really bad side effects, in a lot of ways. Eventually I got on clozapine and I was on other meds that worked adjunctively with it, like metformin and Lamictal. I've been on clozapine for over 3 years now. I've completely recovered. I can go to school. I have a job. Compared to other meds, I've lost the weight that I initially gained, and I'm living an active lifestyle. The blood work was a really big deal. I think that's why they didn't offer it originally in the community mental health clinic I went to. Once I did get on clozapine, I had to get blood work at first every week, and eventually it slows down, but it did take a while. And now I get my finger pricked and the blood sample gets taken into this small machine, and it happens really, really quickly. I don't have to go to a lab to get my blood drawn or anything. And I think they should have it everywhere. And, just as a final note, compared to other medicines I've been on, the side effect rate is much lower, and much less severe in most cases. So, yeah.
All right, thank you, Carson, for sharing with us your experience with clozapine and other medications. You heard Carson talk about a device that measures the ANC with a simple finger prick. That is a device that we have at home. It was very inexpensive, and this allows Carson to get a little drop of blood each week or each month instead of going to the lab. I am shocked that no hospitals in our area have this device. And I am shocked that very few doctors' offices and clinics and pharmacies even know about this. This is a vital innovation for people with serious mental illness, and not enough professionals know about this technology. We really hope that the blood work, the routine blood work, the complicated REMS system that is the source of many interrupted treatments can be reconsidered and changed so that these things don't happen to patients. We'd also like to see this important, simple finger prick point of view system deployed everywhere possible for SMI patients. Thank you to Carson for your comments today, and thank you to everyone for listening to our story.
Hi, my name is Stephen Mem, and I'm here to talk to you about my schizoaffective disorder and how it affects me. I have schizoaffective. I was diagnosed at 23 years old, and it took me 12 years to find a great medicine cocktail. And this cocktail is more manageable life. I'm currently taking medication for generalized anxiety disorder, OCD, schizoaffective, restless leg, and insomnia. My medication I take keeps the symptoms at bay and lets me live a more manageable life. When I'm doing for my I feel it when I'm doing for my medication. Now with my schizoaffective medication, I feel it wearing off because I start to get delusional thinking, think the universe revolves around me, and I'm being watched. When this happens, I find it a harder time to disprove what's going on with my paranoia, my delusions, and anything that goes with that. Right now, I'm seeing different doctors for a thing called hyperprolactemia. This is a condition where it's the development of the milk-producing hormone prolactin, and it occurs in females. But with this medicine, it can occur as a side effect for males. Now, schizoaffective has affected me in different tricks and delusions, a couple of which can be easily proven false. I have problems with my bed, going to bed, falling asleep, and also with getting up in the morning. Like one of my auditory hallucinations is hearing a summer's night with crickets and frogs in the background. This can be easily disproven because I don't sleep near a window and it happens during the wintertime too. There was a time once in my partial care where I was getting signals from the counselors where to go and when to go to have sex with them. Now, I was surrounded by many people for 8 hours, and I get mixed signal for every single one of them. It was torturous. Now I have a voice in my head. His name is Frank. He named himself. He's not a very nice person. He tries to take control of my body and mind, and sometimes it's a hard fight to win because he only comes out when I'm super stressed. He came to life in 2017 when my mom was coming over to take me out to my therapist because my group home couldn't take me out at that time. I wanted to say, hey, I need to go to the psych unit. My mom was getting ridiculed and embarrassed, so the voice came in my head and said, hey, can you let your mom be treated like that? And he said, I'll make everything better. Just let me take control of your mind and body, and we'll make everything better. I let that happen. I woke up with a hole in the wall with my group home manager stunned and sitting there next to the hole in the wall. I only know this because my mom told me. I fear that the struggle being left alone I would have total silence and nothing to keep my mind busy. And I'd be looking for different sounds that going on. Like, what is that? My brain would be like, what is that? Is that real or is that made up? That is something a hard time to adjust to when I move by myself. On my good days, there's little background noise that I can deal with. On my bad days, I have a hard time focusing on what I was doing at the present moment. It takes a lot of energy to look calm. My condition has improved over time. I have hills and valleys, but who doesn't? My worries about schizoaffective and schizophrenia is that we will be constantly stigmatized to if someone has a mental breakdown, be labeled as a killer or someone who shies away because he's one of those crazy people that don't get them. That is my story.
Hello, I'm Michael. I developed schizophrenia as a teenager, and it has been a horrible illness. After 5 different doctors and 13 different antipsychotics, I was finally able to try clozapine, and I felt better right away. I'm disappointed that my doctors waited so long before I could try it. My mother had to do the medical research and find doctors to help, and I'm glad she did because I wasn't able to advocate for myself. Today I'm a college student studying social work, and I want to help others in the mental health field. I run a NAMI support group for individuals with similar challenges as I. My doctor today treats 1,300 patients, and only 5 of them are on clozapine. He is unable and unwilling to accept any more. The additional laboratory paperwork, sending, receiving, and processing labs each week, and the complexity of having to complete REMS data entry and patient status forms are more than he is able to support. After November 15th, 2021, there was a significant problem with obtaining clozapine. My doctor waited on hold for several hours and on multiple occasions, and that was the last straw for my doctor. This is when he finally decided he would not be taking any more clozapine patients. Since starting clozapine, I fulfilled all the blood work requirements for REMS. It has been a major commitment that was only possible because I have supportive parents and transportation. The blood testing and the REMS requirements have been a significant burden to overcome and have made it difficult to find doctors to treat my condition. I have never had ankylocytosis, and I am not at high risk for developing this condition. My family and I live in constant fear that my clozapine will be interrupted. I live in constant fear that my doctor will drop me as a patient and that we will not be able to find another doctor to prescribe clozapine. I have a return of symptoms after missing even one dose, a single dose. The symptoms are terrible and very difficult. This is a vital daily medication for me. I cannot miss even one dose or I have significant consequences. Clozapine is for me like insulin is for a diabetic. Can you imagine if diabetics had to go to a laboratory each week? Can you imagine if their lab data required electronic surveillance that is mandatory with restrictions, significant restrictions, in order for pharmacies to dispense insulin? Can you imagine having trouble finding a doctor to prescribe insulin? Can you imagine if insulin was of high risk of interruption because of the weekly coordination between lab, doctor, pharmacy, and manufacturer? In the case of treating diabetes with insulin, these parameters would be unacceptable. For people with serious mental illness, these parameters required to obtain clozapine are tragic. Thank you for listening to my story.
Hello, my name is Lisa Guardiola, and I'm 51 years old and living in Hazel Crest, Illinois, which is a southern suburb community of Chicago. I have 2 bachelor's degrees, one in psychology and the other in studio arts from St. Xavier University. I'm also a consumer board member of NAMI Illinois and the vice president of NAMI South Suburbs of Chicago, where I facilitate NAMI connection support groups, and I am an inaural voice facilitator. I now work for a mental health provider called Sertoma Center as a community outreach and education trainer and facilitate mental health first aid, QPR suicide prevention, and mental health overviews to the greater Chicago area and Illinois. But most importantly, I'm a person living with schizophrenia. Although my symptoms of auditory hallucinations and paranoid delusions started to develop in my late teens, my formal diagnosis was made in 2004 during an involuntary commitment to a state hospital by my family. I was 33 years old, and at the time, my supportive and loving family made the life-saving decision to have me placed into the hospital. If not for that first hospitalization and my family support, I would not be where I am today in my mental health recovery. During my late 20s and early 30s, I lived independently and worked in the city of Chicago. After a series of environmental stressors, My minor symptoms that I experienced in my teens became more pronounced. I started to have paranoid thoughts, delusions of persecutions, and auditory hallucinations. It was quite frightening as my symptoms felt so real to me. I would later learn that I had anosognosia, which made me unaware that anything was wrong. After my first episode of psychosis, I lost my job and independence due to having symptoms of schizophrenia and had to move back in with my family. For many years after moving back home, I attended a psychosocial rehabilitative program before returning to school and finally back into the workforce. I began volunteering for my local NAMI affiliate, and my family was very supportive in my recovery process. The past 18 years in my recovery journey has had its ups and downs. My mental health recovery is not linear and a lifelong process where I have to actively work towards my wellness. Since my first hospitalization, I have admitted myself into the hospital several times. The difference between my involuntary commitment and my other hospitalizations is that due to therapy and reality testing, I know when I'm struggling with auditory hallucinations, delusional thoughts, and paranoid symptoms. I know how to ask for professional help when needed. I still have symptoms of auditory hallucinations and paranoid thinking to this day, but with professional help, I have learned coping skills and how to manage them enough to be able to work and live a very productive life while actively engaging in my community. When I was first diagnosed, I had recently become unemployed and had to apply for Social Security benefits in order to receive treatment and my medication. Like most applicants, I was denied benefits the first time around and needed to reapply in order to get services. I'm so thankful that my loving family were there to help me to pay for medication and treatment until I received approval of my benefits. Since then, despite some of the complications of navigating the healthcare system, I've been able to remain generally stable due to the proper treatment and access to the healthcare systems. One of the things I still struggle with to this day is side effects of my medication. The first antipsychotic medication that I was on had the side effect of raised prolactin levels and made my breast lactate. I was not sexually active or pregnant at the time to be lactating, so I was weaned off of that medication and placed on an antipsychotic medication I'm on now. The two side effects that I deal with now are weight gain and sleepiness. The sleepiness affects me throughout the day, and I have to actively try to keep awake at work. This also does not help with the weight gain because I am too tired to exercise. I know that at this time there are side effects from all medications, but my wish would be that I would not be so sleepy throughout my day. I will need medications for the rest of my life, but I can see why some of my peers are so resistant to adhere to keeping to their medications to stay well. It is because of the side effects they have to endure to stay well. I know that there is no magic pill to treat schizophrenia, but it would be wonderful if the medications that we are so needed to stay well didn't have to come with the cost of side effects. I would like to ask the FDA to advocate for more research and clinical trials for creating medications that reduce the many debilitating side effects that come with antipsychotic meds. I believe that more testing needs to be done. We who live with schizophrenia deserve to live a healthy existence with medications that do not give us side effects. I want to thank you for giving me the time to share my experience with schizophrenia with you. I am honored to have been given this opportunity, and I hope that my testimony will give insight into what is needed in the future for the creation of future medications. With your help, we can create a future where people like myself are medication compliant due to minimal side effects with medications. Remember that individuals like myself who live with schizophrenia are more than our diagnosis, and mental health recovery is possible. Thank you so much.